Previously on For Wild's Sake.
But also I'm like afraid to leave because I'm gonna miss it.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks ago, we blew a bypass cap in our coolant lines outside of Tucson.
Please listen carefully.
Well, so either go down as one of the cooler things we've ever done with the van, or the most foolish.
As a kid, I spent countless hours flipping through the pages of National Geographic or glued to the TV watching old worn-out VHS tapes of exotic natural wonders. Of all these incredible stories, none ignited my imagination as much as the Racetrack playa and its mysterious sailing stones. At the time, living in a foreign country and having the perspective of, well, a child, these stones might as well have been in the farthest reaches of the Sahara, or on Mars for that matter. They simply represented an idea, a sense of wonder for a world filled with wild and magical places. That spark would spur a drive to explore and immerse myself in the natural world for decades to come. It wasn't until young adulthood that I realized the grainy old images of those rocks were taken right here in the contiguous United States, and that they were accessible to the public. Here now, the place, the phenomenon, all of it, somehow seemed even more beautiful than we'd imagined. It's not often that reality can outdo the imaginations of a child, but this place certainly did. The racetrack itself is a dry lake bed, formed by fine-grained sediments deposited by rain washing down the surrounding hillsides for millennia. Every so often, a large stone or two will break loose and cascade its way down to the southern outskirts of the playa. How these rocks ended up in the middle of the lake bed, and even more surprisingly, with long grooves scoured behind them as if to indicate they'd scooted themselves along the ground of their own free will, was a long and hotly debated topic. Believe it or not, the phenomenon still wasn't properly understood when I was a child, fueling my imagination even more, knowing that the world still had unsolved mysteries. In fact, The science wouldn't be settled until 2014 by a group of researchers armed with GPS tracking equipment and time-lapse photography. But our newfound understanding of what drives these stones to move unaided across the playa's surface is no less incredible than any of the supernatural legends that predated it. In a rare and unlikely set of scenarios, when this notoriously dry part of the valley receives enough winter rain to form an ephemeral pond, and then gets cold enough overnight to freeze, encasing the rocks within it, but then warms just enough in the morning to create a thin slick of water below it, and have a strong enough wind to blow that sheet of ice across the slick level surface, kind of like how an air hockey puck glides across the table, the rocks, for a brief and beautiful moment, become weightless. If our journey to the playa served no other purpose, then it would be a reminder of just how strange and wonderful our world can be. Our time in the valley was drawing to a close. But we certainly weren't going to leave without exploring another one of the park's natural wonders, and another place that made us feel like children.
Is it good?
400-foot tall sand dunes. We experienced a lot of incredible things in Death Valley, but looking back on it now, the thing that stands out the most is the silence. Away from the roads and development, with no leaves for the wind to rustle and no water to babble along the stream beds, our body's internal rhythms, our breath and heartbeats were almost deafening. Silence is an essential part of the human experience, and something that in evolutionary terms has been lost quite recently to the relentless hum of technological development. Sound pollution is so pervasive in our modern world, we've almost stopped noticing it. With the rumble of a distant highway or subtle drone of electricity coursing through our neighborhoods and homes, we've forgotten what being in true silence feels like. Environmental advocates like to put a dollar figure on the value of outdoor space. We're often reminded of the importance of our natural spaces because they account for the over $450 billion of annual revenue associated with outdoor recreation. But what's the value of silence? How do we measure the benefits of something so intangible? Sure, we can prove scientifically that silence encourages neuron development and lowers blood pressure. But what about the things science can't quantify, like the enrichment of our spirits or the opportunity for unobstructed reflection? What are they worth? By mid-February, we were picking our way through the rolling hills of Central California on our way to the coast. As usual, both by necessity and unforeseen circumstance, we were taking our time.
Courtesy of Lone Pine, California.
Our friends at Gowesty's headquarters are located in Los Osos, California, and we had some much-needed upgrades to do while in town. We wanted a place to store our wet fishing gear outside of the van, and also a way to carry spare gas, which our time in Death Valley made us realize we were sorely lacking. It didn't take long to get roped into a camping trip with the employees, who naturally all own Vanagons. And when the Gowesty boys tell you they've got a cool spot up in the mountains they want to show you, the only acceptable answer is lead the way. Assuring us the road was chill, we set off for a night above the clouds. Needless to say, the terrain was a notch or two above chill. But after an hour of white knuckling, frame shaking, hairpin turns later, we made it to what might as well have been the edge of the earth. We couldn't have felt more proud of our little rig, which only 4 months earlier was puttering away from the Atlantic coast and now sat firmly on the edge of the Pacific. The road ahead seemed limitless, and we couldn't wait to see what it had in store. In the morning, we said our goodbyes and continued north. Our fascination with freshwater fish has taken us to some incredible, far-flung places and built an appreciation for the complexities of their respective environments. But fishing isn't the only vehicle that gets us into the natural world. Sometimes, just observing the world passively is reward enough, and the rich marine ecosystems we are currently living alongside provided us endless opportunity to appreciate nature's bounty. You could spend 1,000 lifetimes learning about the interconnected web of life along the California coast. from the beautifully adapted shorebirds to the microcosms within the tidal pools, and still only scratch the surface. Knowing our time was limited, we did our best to soak up every second. Every year, we try and spend each other's birthdays visiting museums, art galleries, or science centers. So this year, we decided to spend mine learning a little bit about the world offshore that we couldn't see from land. It's a pretty startling contrast, watching captive sea creatures suspended in tanks when only hours earlier we'd been in open and wild space. But for better or worse, humanity's collective vision doesn't extend too far beyond its nose, and these educational centers play a pivotal role in helping us value and understand a world we rarely see, yet we constantly put under threat. Okay, if you've been following along and you know your geography, you'll know we aren't exactly tracing an efficient line across the state. But we had an opportunity to shoot a wedding in Palm Springs, so we retraced our steps south to recoup some funds.
Are you allowing customers to come into the store?
Just not to eat it.
Just to order? Okay.
Little did we know, it would be the last social gathering we'd attend for over a year.
Levi wants to eat too. Sorry, bud. You're on a special diet.
There's really only one major trout fishery in the US whose peak season is in the dead of winter, and though our plans were loose, we positioned ourselves within striking distance. Every February, anglers across the globe's social media feeds begin being flooded with images of grotesquely large and toothy trout. The fish are so big, you'd be forgiven for thinking they weren't trout at all, especially not a subspecies of cutthroat, a fish whose other lineages rarely exceed 5 pounds. But they are, in fact, a special and unique strain of Lahontan cutthroat, which live in a special and unique ecosystem, Pyramid Lake, in Nevada. And we knew just the guy to show us around.
You have one unheard message.
Hey dude, got some less than ideal news. I just got a call from the tribe, and they are officially closing the lake due to COVID. I know we had talked about this potentially being something that might happen, but now that it's here, it feels a little bit surreal. It really sucks. It's been a part of the season, but yeah, I just wanted to get a hold of you, give you a call before you guys headed out here, and hopefully they open it this season and we can try and get out this year. But I mean, with the way that it looks right now, I don't know if they're going to reopen the lake. So I'll keep you updated on everything on my end, and yeah, hopefully we can get out. Talk soon. Bye.
End of message to delete.
Well, that changes things. We could have never anticipated that our first year on the road would include the challenges of a national and global health crisis in its first few months. And like most people, the gravity of the situation hadn't fully set in.
Now to growing concerns about the deadly coronavirus.
COVID-19.
Coronavirus.
400 people have been sickened, and 9 people have died.
After testing positive for the coronavirus.
The risk for all of us of becoming infected will be increasing.
Public health emergency.
40,000 people have been infected.
1,600 Americans now are infected.
The novel coronavirus outbreak spreading across the world.
Active containment mode.
For what the CDC has called an inevitable spread.
News, stay at home. That is the order tonight from 4 state governors.
Schools in America are closing.
There will be a civil fine.
We direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
It'd be hard to blame you for thinking that nomads come pre-equipped for this kind of thing. After all, we're self-contained, self-reliant, and spend the majority of our time away from population centers. We thought so too, until being faced with the first wave of lockdowns. The truth is, our compact size makes us ill-equipped for long-term self-subsistence. Our fridge and dry storage can only fit limited food, and we can only carry so much water. We need to shower at least once every few weeks, and if we aren't in the woods, we need access to public restrooms daily. With supply chains running short, facilities closing their doors, and even public lands, or for lack of a better word, our home, closing their gates, we weren't sure exactly what we were going to do. We didn't have a brick-and-mortar home or apartment to return to, but it was becoming clear we couldn't stay on the road. Luckily, my uncle, who owns 2 properties and was currently locked down in Washington, offered us his home in Arizona for what we all hoped would be a brief week or 2 hiatus while the country collectively worked things out. By now, we all know how this story plays out, so I won't bore you with the details of a world we're all sort of still living in. But unlike most people, our quarantine station had no internet access or cell phone service. So for the next 6 nerve-wracking, frustrating, anxious, and blissful weeks, we were almost entirely disconnected from the outside world. Brief forays into town for supplies would update us on the current state of affairs, but otherwise, We had very little to do and all the time in the world to do it. I'd be lying if I said we didn't relish the opportunity to be completely free of obligation. But arguably the biggest beneficiary of our idle time was Bullwinkle, whose many months of hard living were finally starting to show.
Yes. Yes.
Out with the old, in with the new.
So these are the original coolant pipes for the Vanagon, which are made out of this plastic material. They lasted for 35 years, but just got brittle over time and started to crack. We tried to fix it a number of different ways. You can see here where we smeared some silicone on it to try and stop the leak. And those fixes, they always last a week or a month, and the leak would always come back. But now we're replacing it with these brand new stainless steel lines, and that should be good for life. We'd grown accustomed to our 24-hour access to the natural world, so staying entirely indoors was a tough pill to swallow. Fortunately, the neighborhood we were in was small, yet spacious, and sat right on the doorstep of an extensive trail network leading deep into the undisturbed desert. Every day, we'd venture out and head off into the endless washes and plateaus, and spend our days wandering, exercising, reflecting, or just plain watching. We had nowhere to be, nothing to do, and oddly, despite the current state of the world, we were somewhat content. Though we were eager to get back on the road, we were grateful to be forced to halt momentum, a momentum that, like most people, we sometimes feel hostage to.
Nice shooting, Tex.
We often think of our planet as having two distinct spheres, that of humanity and that of the natural world. Wildlife occupies one sphere, and we another. The two worlds aren't meant to cross, and we acknowledge that neither is particularly well suited to the other. It's a separation that's primarily upheld by humanity's relentless and often blind pursuit of progress. The natural world moves in incremental and glacially slow timescales. Human development, on the other hand, moves at lightning speed. We've developed modern ground transportation, infrastructure, air, and marine travel to cut down on idle time and streamline our movements. We've produced electricity and artificial light to keep productivity high through all hours of the day and night, and built massive structures to maintain our energy demands. In some cases, there are real physical boundaries that keep wildlife out of urban spaces, and in others, the danger, light, and noise are enough to keep the world separate. But one of the most interesting things to come out of the global lockdowns was an almost immediate disintegration of many of those boundaries. Planes were grounded, cars were parked, and streets were emptied. Everyone was locked indoors, glued to their screens, waiting for the signal it was safe to return to normal. For the first time since the Industrial Revolution, most of the human world fell silent. It didn't take long for the animal world to notice. Suddenly, wildlife was able to travel deeper and stay longer, and we had a front row seat to watch it unfold. After a month and a half, restrictions began to ease, and public lands reopened, giving us the opportunity we needed to get back on the road. Besides, temperatures were already skyrocketing into the hundreds in Arizona, and if we didn't start the journey soon, we worried we'd cook Bullwinkle in the process. It was early May, and the Arizona high country was beginning to thaw. In a matter of days, we'd leave the arid desert valleys we'd called home for the winter behind and embrace the coming of spring in the mountains. It was bittersweet, leaving our quarantine station behind. The past 6 weeks hadn't been easy, but they felt safe somehow. But we're firm believers that life's greatest rewards lay waiting in the unknown, and the only way to get there is to take a leap.
It's hot, boy.
It's 9 o'clock at night. It's 91 degrees. It's time for ice cream. So we definitely earned it.
Remember those rare southwestern trout I mentioned earlier? I think it's time we paid them a little visit. On the next episode of For Wild's Sake.